X Remix. I'm your host, Tabatha Jones, the corporate escape Sherpa. And today on the Gen X Remix, we've got a fabulous guest. Do you sometimes reflect on your life and realize that you've put yourself in a lot of cages based on other people's expectations or shoulds that they've put on you? If so, you're going to love Dr. Courtney. She's a fiercely loving mama, wife, and stepmom, living her best fairy tale life on the East Coast with her family and her fur baby Dexter. She's a firm believer that saltwater heals everything, and her perfectly imperfect soul feels most at peace near the waves. Fueled by life's plot twists, she has turned her own stormy divorce journey into a happily ever after, with a twist, and now helps others do the same. Dr. Courtney is a best-selling author, mindset mentor, and divorce recovery specialist with a DNP, which is a doctorate in nursing, blending science, soul, and sass to help people uncage themselves from heartbreak. When she's not coaching, you can find her treasure hunting for sea glass, scribbling words that set her heart free, or living in the beautiful chaos with her family. Because happily ever after isn't a fairy tale, it's a mindset. Let's welcome Dr. Courtney. All right, Courtney, welcome to the Gen X Remix. I'm so excited about our conversation today. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Excited to be here. How are you?
I am fabulous. It is a sunny day in California outside of San Francisco where I'm at, so I can't complain.
It
All
is a
right.
snow day over here on the East Coast, and we are not used to this, so I will complain.
Oh, you guys are getting hammered right now if I saw the news correctly.
Yes, we are. I think
Oh.
it was 8.5 inches this morning on our deck, and the last time we had that was like 3 years ago. So yeah, I'm cold and a little bitter right now.
So I always laugh when I'm talking to a client on the East Coast and I'm talking about being cold. They're like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know, like 55. And they start
Oh,
laughing at me and telling me about their wood pile.
yes, yes. Now we're not
Oh.
as bad as like northern East Coast. I won't complain that much because they would tell me I'm being a sissy, but we're not going to get out of the 20s today, and I'm just not made for this weather.
No, I don't think many of us are. All right. Well, we're going to hope for some warm weather coming your way soon. So let's kind of dive in here. I know I shared that I love learning about remixes. I read a bit in your bio, but why don't you share with us some of or one of your remix stories?
Yes. So I have one giant remix with other remix pathways in there as well. So I like to put it this way: I remixed my life and rewrote my happily ever after at the same time. So, what does that mean? Everybody says, oh, does happily ever after really exist? It does, but not in a princess format. I lived my whole life in a life full of shoulds. I should date a certain type of guy. I should live a certain lifestyle. I should go to college, get married, have children, climb the career ladder, all the shoulds many of us are very, very familiar with. And I did all those things until one day I saw all of the cages I had put myself in, others had put me in, and I was suffocating. And no part of my life looked anything like I had ever dreamed for it to look. It actually looked quite the opposite. And I decided I wasn't going to play by the rules anymore. I wasn't going to live the life full of shoulds. I wasn't going to be trapped in cages. So I walked away from my marriage and I started to walk away from a 20 plus year career. And then I walked right into, so my granddaddy used to have this saying, you need to be careful that you don't go from the frying pan into the fire. And it took me until my adult years to understand what that meant. I jumped straight from the frying pan right into the fire. I joined, the ranks of single motherhood. And then I met a man who had his own issues with family court, a very lengthy custody battle. I became the target, the stepmom, the evil
Mm.
stepmom. I don't have a word on my nose, so thank goodness. So yeah, I went through all of that. And then one day after 8 years after my divorce and about 6 years of a long, lengthy custody battle, I turned around, I looked at the wreckage behind me, and I was like, you know what? I got to find Courtney. I walked away from a life full of shoulds. I gotta find Courtney. And when I decided to do that after a whole host of illnesses and autoimmune disorder, lots of trauma, PTSD, and anxiety, I decided to make a change for myself, for my child, for my family. And I decided I was going to take over my own happily ever after. And I wrote a book and changed everything.
Wow, that was pretty powerful for a remix story. Oh my goodness, so many shoulds and so many cages. And I believe you're not quite Gen X, if I remember correctly from an earlier conversation. I
Indeed.
think this is really common for Gen X, but interesting to hear from we'll call you a more mature millennial.
Yes, I learned that phrase. It's an elder millennial. But what I tell people is I'm an elder millennial by age only. That's it. My entire personality and my body is a Gen X completely.
I think my body's trying to say it's a boomer lately, but you know,
Yeah, there are days it's even
doing their
boomer
thing.
level, but yes, I definitely think I
Oh,
was born way too late. I guess it would be late, but I don't identify with most of the millennial traits that they talk about. So we'll stick with
yeah,
elder millennial. I'm cool with that.
I like it. So many stereotypes. So I have a question for you just based on that story. So trying to find out who Courtney was, what was your process for figuring that out?
Ooh, that was messy. That was a messy process. So I tried therapy, talk therapy. I've always been a writer, just journals and letters and things like that. That's always been a big part of my story, part of my process. I got away from it for a number of years just because I thought, I'm a single mom. I'm going through a divorce. I don't have time who has time to write? So I really got away from that for a number of years, but really dug into, meditation and yoga and therapy and self-help books. And I was like, okay, outwardly, this is working. I'm starting to just hit the thumbs up button on messages instead of responding poorly and reacting. And I'm doing all these really great things, but inwardly, I was still battling this monster. And I finally decided that I was going to label the monster. And the monster was emotional justice. And once I identified that that is what I was craving, because in case you didn't know this, it actually doesn't exist. I had to Google it and do all kinds of research. It doesn't exist. I was finally able to say, I can't find that. I'm never going to get that, but I'm going to destroy my life, myself, and my family in the pursuit of something that doesn't even exist. That was the light switch for me.
That is so powerful. So let's kind of dive into all of the things. So the marriage, what made you finally decide to leave after so many years of feeling like that's what you were supposed to be doing and where you should be?
My son is actually what made me walk away. My whole childhood, I was the product of parents who stayed together for the child. Me being the child that was never asked whether that's what I wanted or not. So I watched them fight and argue and talk about divorce and slam and leave and do all the things. That was what marriage was for me, to me, the picture of it. And I knew I didn't want to ever repeat that cycle. And my ex-husband and I started repeating that cycle. We started fighting all the time. We were growing really far apart. And when my son actually told a family member of mine about an argument that my ex-husband and I had, he was able to, in a toddler way, repeat some of the things that he heard. I knew in that moment that that was going to be a cycle I was not willing to do. No matter how hard it was going to be, I was going to show him that you don't stay in an environment like that. And that's not what marriage looks like. You shouldn't be treated that way, and you shouldn't treat people that way.
Oh my gosh, amen. And it is so interesting. I love because that I love that so many of my guests and I, like, we have so many things in common. And it kind of takes me back to my first marriage. I was young and doing what I should, right? Get married at 20, have a baby at 25. Well, we were struggling before I got pregnant. And then as I was going through the pregnancy journey, I kind of got to that spot where I was like, I'm not putting my kid through the things that I went through as a child, sitting there waiting for a father that was never going to show up. I'm not doing it. So I filed for a divorce while I was still pregnant, and people were shocked. Are you
Oh
crazy? A
yeah.
baby needs a father, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I would rather be on welfare than put my child through that feeling of somebody doesn't want me or this isn't where I belong. So it's really interesting how our children and seeing things through our children's eyes or how we imagine our children are going to be viewing things, how it can really push us into action in that relationship space.
Absolutely. I've spent my whole childhood feeling unheard, unseen, and I still don't ever want my child to feel unheard or unseen, or that my decisions, there's a meme or a saying out there that says don't let your storm get your child wet. That's 100% the truth. You should not do that. And I realized, choose your heart. Everything in life can be and sometimes is hard, but choose your heart. Do you want to stay in a marriage that doesn't serve you and fit you? And before I go any further, I want to definitely say it was not, we were both mutually toxic for each other. I don't want to
Yeah,
put, an excessive amount of blame on one person versus the other or carry the victim stance because that doesn't get anybody anywhere. But, you
exactly.
know, I didn't want my child to be in that hard. I wanted him to be able to see that there is life beyond things like that. And one of the big things when you said people were shocked because you got a divorce while you were pregnant, the societal narrative around divorce is one that just needs complete blowing up. Why are you shocked? I'm making a choice for me as a grown person, woman. If a man initiates the divorce, whatever, I'm doing it for my children. I'm making the decision. Why does society act so shocked? Because the reality is kids need safe parents. They don't just need parents.
Exactly. Yeah. And in many cases, they can still have both parents. In fact, both parents happier because they're where they belong
Yes.
and they're in a better place in life. So, absolutely understand that. Oh my gosh. So, I'm curious because you then had or you also had a really long career, but it sounds like you transitioned into becoming a divorce coach, divorce court. I don't know where that came from. You can't be that.
Yeah, no, I do not want to be a
So,
divorce court.
no, no, thank you. So tell me a
They're
little bit
terrible.
about that journey and that transition.
Well, I knew when I walked away from my marriage that I was getting really burnout on. So I was a nurse
Mhm.
for 20, well, I've been a nurse for 22 years this year, actually. So this was a number of years ago, but it was burning me out. But it was again that I should stay in this career because it's a good career. It'd still be a great career. I had worked hard on higher education degrees. I needed to stay. I should, do that because I'm going to have to pay these student loans back. So it was this whole, like strategic life for me is this is where I'm supposed to be. And throughout the divorce process and then into meeting my now husband, I just started to realize that it was becoming less and less of the personality that I had. And coupled with some things that happened at the job I was at, politics took over, not great bosses took over. It was in a small town. I just needed to leave. I was becoming a weeble wobble, stuck in one spot, being knocked down, but getting right back up and not changing anything. So I was just like, yeah, I really need a change. I need a change. I could feel it, but I had no idea. I mean, I'd lived this whole life full of shoulds. What do I do now? Like, I want to become a party planner. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? So, in trying to figure that out and then meeting my now husband and going through the family court journey of my own, the family court journey of my now husband's, the custody battle, I started to see a spark started to light that something has to give in the family court system. It is the most corrupt place for families and children to be. And I said, I'm going to become an attorney. And then I was like, oh yeah, those student loans for nursing. I can't do that. So in Googling, what else can I do? The concept of divorce coaching came up and I was just like, this is it. I can help people stop them in their tracks from turning divorce into a trauma. Is, they say that divorces don't destroy kids. It's how you do your divorce that could potentially destroy kids. So it's like, you know what? I've got to get in there and do this. I don't want to see my kid or my stepkids or any other kids put through the trauma in family court. And it just kind of took off from there, to be honest. It was corny as it sounds, it was meant to be.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so great. And A couple of things that you said that I want to tap on is, again, that should, you're doing what you should, staying in it for longevity. A lot of us do it. I spent more than 30 years in corporate because I was on the track. I should continue to want to grow my career. And in all honesty, I loved my job until one day I didn't. And that propelled me into action. But I see a lot of people, especially women, who will stay where they should be or where they feel stable because that's
Yes.
what they think the option is when they're miserable and their health is taking a toll and they're dreading getting up every day and the energy is low, but it's what I should do. So I'm going to keep doing it. So kudos to you for taking that action and making a shift. What has that journey been like for you?
Um, yeah, I don't want to be cliche and say transformative. It's been eye-opening and it's been hard. It's been very hard. Taking a step back from something that you should do is really scary. And our nervous systems are really comfortable. Even if it's chaos, it's comfortable chaos because it's what we're used to. We know what to expect. We know how to control the situation. We know, what's coming at us. So even though it might be really unsafe and really unhealthy for us, our nervous system is like, oh no, I like the chaos over there because I know what to do with it. So when you take yourself out of that chaos and then you're kind of like, oh, am I safe? Am I really safe? You really have to dig in and figure out, are you? And how do you keep yourself there and not reverting back to, older ways? And in becoming a divorce coach, it really transitioned multiple times because I started as just a divorce coach and then moved into the recovery piece, the blended family, and then the writing your happily ever after. So it definitely evolved for me, but it started to make me realize if I'm going to sit here and tell these clients what they need to do, I should be living this. I should be embodying all of this. And it made me take a step back and you know what part am I playing in my own misery in my life, and being a divorcee, being a remarried person, being a stepmom, going through the rigors of family court, what part am I playing? Because I'm telling these people not to do it, so I shouldn't be doing it either. So it was, to not be cliche, it was healing and transformative, but that's why.
I like it. Yeah, it's not cliche at all. It's reality, right? And it just takes being brave and making that step and that transition. And to your point of it's hard. I actually have shifted to coaching women who want to make their corporate escape. These are women who have been in corporate for decades that will wait until that day when a severance package comes, usually unexpectedly, to start building a business. I'm like, it's hard. It's harder than people make it look. And, when you say it's hard, I kind of think about what it takes to build a business before that, to basically rebuild your identity, getting back to who is Courtney, because at one time she was a very successful nurse who was taking care of other people, who was doing all these things. And now you've transitioned into this. All right, I need to start walking the walk and living my life and doing things that serve other people in a way that probably you wish people were there to serve you as you were going through the journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have met some phenomenal colleagues that I wish I would have had when I was first divorcing, before I divorced, in the moments of feeling like, I I don't know what's next for me. What is the should that should come now? Like I wish I could have had the people that I've met now, or even just the woman I've become, to be like, okay, here, come this way.
Yeah.
This is what you should do. Because yes, but one thing I thought was interesting that you said is people who wait until that severance package comes and they have no choice but to move. Those are the people that I try to impact first. Is don't wait until you have no choice. I had become so unhealthy that it was coming down to I was going to have no choice. And it's like, you don't want your new identity to be born out of no choice. You want a choice in writing your happily ever after and writing your new identity. Even if it looks nothing like the old one, you need to have the all rights and trademarks to who you're turning into.
Oh my gosh, so many facts, so many fact bombs there. I hope people are writing this down because that is absolutely true. I mean, you have the power. It's so empowering when you're the one making the choice in whatever area it is, whether it's career, divorce, life, anything. I mean, when you are in control and making that decision, it's such a different feeling than it is when you're forced because your health has suffered, because you're at a point where your emotional state is in such a bad place or whatever it is. I love that. So I have a question for you as we're talking about kind of that new
Yeah.
identity and seeing yourself differently and getting into this divorce coach space, which we're going to go deeper into in a moment. But I'm curious about curious to know how your friends and family reacted to you leaving nursing and getting into the divorce coach. I don't know why I can't say that. Divorce coach role.
Well, for the most part, everybody was really supportive. I did wait a while to tell anybody. And there are, quite frankly, there are still a few people because I do a few things PRN with my nursing degree, just because again, student loans, I get to pay those off. But there are still a few people who don't know exactly what it is I do. But I think one thing that was like a common theme is, oh, so you're a therapist now? No,
Mhm.
I am not a therapist. Therapy is still a really great part of what I do. I tell my clients they need to still have a therapist and they also need to have me, just like when you have doctors that have specialties. Just one doctor doesn't treat everything. You've got people who treat different systems. So, therapy uncovers the past, coaching works with the present and the future. So, that's one thing when people are like, "Oh, you turned into a therapist." No, that is not what coaching is. But for the most part, our close team was really supportive, just because they had seen what we went through, and they were just really proud that I turned it into something to be proud of, and didn't let it turn me into a victim or um, become bitter, even though I did for a little while. In full transparency.
I mean, that's okay, right? I mean, I'm a little bit of a petty person on certain things, so I get it. And sometimes it just feels good to sit in the feeling of just being annoyed and bitter, right? It kind of becomes a little bit of, well, I'm just going to sit here until I'm ready to not be sitting here. And that's okay.
Exactly.
But you can't stay there. You have to have
Mm-mm.
an end date, right? So to speak. It's just, okay, I'm going to sit in the suck for a little bit longer and then we're going forward. So that's
I
really
always laugh and tell my
wise.
husband, like, the high road is so lonely to be on. So I just take an exit into the gutter for a little while and then I'll come back up to the high road. Just give me a minute to take this quick detour.
Just for a
Let me be
minute.
petty for a minute. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's the best. You do. You have to be petty. It's healthy. It's healthy. I hope somebody wrote that down too. It's healthy to be petty for a little bit, just as long as you're not
It
mean.
absolutely is. Because if you're not, you're being fake. And that's another thing that everybody always asks me is, how are you healed? Like any speaking engagements, podcasts, friends, family, how are you healed? I'm not healed. I'm healing. There's still going to be those moments where I'm going to get mad and I'm going to react instead of respond. I'm still going to be petty Betty every now and then and take that exit right on down into the gutter for a little bit. That's normal. And if you're not doing those things, you're burying it. And that's not going to be healthy because it's going to sit there, it's going to fester, and then it's eventually going to pop up and you're going to get stuck in that gutter. So,
Yeah.
just as an aside, she is right. It is healthy to be petty for a little bit.
Well, I see a naturopath. I've been seeing her for a while, just, hormones and body stuff going on. And she said, I feel like you're really holding something in that maybe you need to let out just because it's going to come out at the wrong time and the wrong place. And I'm like, yeah, possibly. And it was funny because it was tied to some things that had been going on toward the end of my corporate role. And I thought I had worked through them all over the past couple of years. And I was having a conversation with a few former coworkers, and someone said something, and I felt like my heart rate started going up. I could see myself turning red. I'm like, I haven't worked through that. Gotta take it back out, unpack it, and let's go work through it a little bit longer. It's just a journey, and it's going to continue, and it is a path to healing, but it's not a quick and easy one for sure.
No, it is not. And that is your fight or flight responding. That's why your heart rate went up. That's why you feel
Yeah.
like that. And until you address those triggers, your nervous system is still going to think whatever your trigger is, whether it's the corporate world you left behind, a spouse you left behind, whatever the case may be, your nervous system is always going to look at that like it's a bear until you get that trigger deactivated, until you work through, why does it trigger me? Why does it make me feel this way? What part am I playing in it triggering me? And then let it out. It's always going to manifest that way.
Yeah. Got to turn that bear into a bunny at some point. We're getting there.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Yes. We're working on it. It's a very tiny, cuddly bear right now, but it's still a bear.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know that you are an author and you wrote a book called Uncaged, The Key to Happily Ever After, which is a bestseller on Amazon. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what drove you to write the book. What was your inspiration and tell us all about it.
My journey was my inspiration. Like I said, writing has always been a very big part of my life. Even as a child, if we went into a store, I wanted to get a notebook and a pen. Even though I had 1,000 of them, I wanted another one because just the right notebook and just the right pen will get me to get my feelings out of my head. It was how I untied knots that were in my head. So, and I don't know if anybody remembers these. This probably is a little bit of my millennial coming out, but they're little dear diaries that came out. They were little electronic diaries. They were purple. And I had to have one, begged my parents for years. And when I finally got one, I was like, well, this is cool, but I like my pen and paper, and then did not play with it very often. And my parents were very not happy about that. But it was like, I just love the feel of pen and paper to really untie those knots in your brain. So as I was going through, young adulthood and then into dating my first husband, getting married, then all of the different cages that came after, I would write them all down in journals and try to work through my feelings and things like that. And then after we went through all of our court battles and things like that, somebody said to me one day, you should write a book. And I giggled and I was like, oh, I have enough journals to fill a, entire series of encyclopedias. And then I didn't laugh anymore. I was like, oh, wait, I do have enough to do that. So I kind of, brushed it off. I shouldn't do that. Instead of the should, I shouldn't do that because I'm too busy doing all the things I should be doing. So I was like, whatever. Didn't think anything else of it. And then coming into the divorce recovery role, it was like, I want to make a bigger impact. I love my one-to-one clients. I love all the things that I do, the networking and engagement. But I said to myself, I have to make a bigger impact. How can I do that? And I thought, well, if I can get my story out there and it helps just a few people getting it into their hands, reading it and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe that's the impact I can do. So anyway, I decided to start thinking about writing the book. And then the end of our court battle actually landed my husband in jail for false accusations for 30 days. And that ripped our worlds completely apart. And I started doing journaling. I started talking to healers and shamans and anyone who could give me any of my hope back, any of my faith back. And one of them said, I see you writing a book. And it was like,
Wow.
Okay, there's my answer. I'm going to write a book about all of this because it needs to be told. Our story needs to be told. And then everything literally just fell into place after that.
Wow. That is incredible. So, what does your husband think about this book as it's talking about the divorce and all of the things?
Yeah, he was a little hesitant at first. To be fair, when I first started writing it, it was my petty side came out. Let's just be honest. That's part of the writing process. So some of the more pettier pieces of things that were going on came out. But as it really started to take shape, so the first half of the book is Cages. So it's a memoir. And it talks about my life, my childhood, my young adult, my first marriage, and then meeting my now husband and going through his court battle. The second half goes into how you uncage by owning your role as a second spouse, by owning your role as a step parent, by grieving. The grieving process is something so many people miss when it comes to life transitions. And then for the final step is forgiveness. So once he started to see it take shape and read it before, it ever went anywhere, it was still just the manuscript in my hands. He was like, you have to do this. You absolutely have to do this. He said, this is beautifully written. I love it. Absolutely let him read it to make sure if there's anything in there. He was like, that can't be there. He could tell me, but he has been the biggest supporter of my journey, the book, and just a little nugget for anyone who gets it. The hand that's on the front cover of the book that I'm reaching for is actually his hand. He came to the photo shoot and it's his hand.
That's amazing. I was going to say your book cover is beautiful. I haven't ordered your book yet. I just haven't had a chance to get it into my queue. But I can't wait to read it. But that is so amazing. And that was the one thing when I went out to your site and I was looking around and learning more about you. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a beautiful cover. Oh,
It was an amazing experience. One that I wholeheartedly said I would not do. I will not be on the cover. It will be a generic cover. And then as things progressed and unfolded, I was like, no, I have to do this. It was and you'll read about it. It's one of the last chapters, but it was my final uncaging was flying out to Denver, meeting with my publisher and doing that cover shoot was my final uncaging. So it was wonderful.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I couldn't imagine you putting anyone else on that cover after the story that you've just kind of walked us through and shared this whole journey. Oh my gosh. So I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, oh my gosh, how do I get in touch with her? What is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you if they want to stay connected?
They can email me if they feel comfortable with that. So it's Dr. Court, DRCOURT _everaftercoach.com, or they can go to that same handle, Dr. Court _everaftercoach on Instagram if they like social media better, or they can go to drcourtney.me. That's my website. And then that links you to all of those things, including my book.
That's amazing. We'll make sure that all of those links are in our show notes so people can find you if they didn't catch the note. If you were to give our listeners one final bit of advice, what would that be?
Own your story and write your own damn happily ever after.
Dang, I don't even know if I can follow that up. All right, mic drop, dropping it. So good. That is, I can't even add to that. That's beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Gen X Remix. And we absolutely are so grateful for your time, Courtney, and look forward to staying in touch.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. What an episode. Dr. Courtney, thank you for sharing your incredible journey of resilience, transformation, and of course, rewriting your own damn happily ever after. Your story is such a powerful reminder that we don't have to stay in the cages that we or society puts us in. For everyone listening, if you're feeling stuck, if you're weighed down by the shoulds in life, or you've been waiting for permission to step into something better, this is it. You get to own your story. You get to take control and design a future that actually feels good to you. And if today's conversation hit home, be sure to connect with Dr. Courtney. You'll find all of her links in the show notes, including where to grab a copy of her book, Uncaged, The Key to Happily Ever After. Seriously, go check it out. I can't wait to get my copy. As always, if you love this show, make sure you follow the Gen X Remix wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, maybe you hear her saying a lot of I shoulds, or she's worried about how other people judge her or feel about her, send it to her, because you never know who's waiting for a nudge to break free and start something new. And if you're dreaming of getting out of the cage and creating your own powerful remix by building your corporate escape plan, we've got you covered there too. Let's chart your path to freedom. Grab my new Career Transition Clarity Guide, which you can get as a free gift when you visit my website, empowered-leader.com, or through the links in the show notes. Until next time, own your story, write your own damn ending, and never let the shoulds define you. See you on the next episode.